It is the highest award a civilian can receive. 70 years after serving in the Civil Air Patrol during World War II, and surrounded by friends, family, and other dignitaries, Grayce Benson Kerr was awarded the Congressional Gold Medal. Colonel Slowinski explains the role of Civil Air Patrol during World War II.
The idea of Civil Air Patrol originated as a collective brainstorm of pilots and aviators before World War II. In all of the conquered countries and territories, civil aviation was more or less halted in order to reduce the chance of sabotage. Countries that were directly involved in the conflict strictly regulated their general aviation, allowing only military flights. American aviators did not wish to see the same fate happen to U.S. pilots. They wanted to stay active. They wanted to help in the war effort. Pilots and crew members in critical missions throughout the U.S. were recruited for the war effort and went overseas. Civil Air Patrol members filled in for them and performed aviation and other services throughout the states. Civil Air Patrol provided coastal patrol for the submarines and is credited with sinking 2 German U-boats. Civil Air Patrol has continued after the war to serve the country for over 73 years, providing search and rescue, aerospace education, and the cadet program for youth. There are 7 World War II members in Minnesota that personally received this award prior to today. Receiving the award today is Grayce Benson Kerr. Grayce will receive the award today for her service and posthumously for her sister, Florence Benson Stein. Grayce and Florence Benson joined Civil Air Patrol in the St. Paul Squadron as adult members. Grayce remembers serving in the Burlington Drum and Bugle Corps on weekends. She also remembers that she and her sister Florence flew in aircraft around the state looking for members of the military that were absent from their stations without leave. Grayce, would you like to say a few words for the audience?
She told me earlier that it's been over 70 years since she served in the Civil Air Patrol, and she never dreamt that she'd be honored 70 years later for what she did. But it's quite an achievement, really. And some of the, if you want to look at the display out here, it's a lot of memorabilia from that era. So she's very grateful.
Grayce, I have to tell you, I've been in this job for a little over 7 months now, and this is truly the best part of the job. You know, we focus nowadays on athletics a lot in our world, right? The sports stars and all that. And I recently watched a Hall of Fame presentation to a former Minnesota Viking, and they talked about, I think it was Fran Tarkenton, who you will remember, talked about how this was so overdue. But we focus on that way too much. No offense to Mick Tingelhoff and all the people that have played that sport, but our World War II veterans and the Civil Air Patrol. I mean, I'm a Johnny-come-lately because literally the Minnesota Congressional delegation started this process a few years ago, as you heard. And they've been behind this from day one because one of the greatest parts of this job, and I know when I see Joel Brott and others here from the different law enforcement groups and the city councils, other elected officials, I've never had the opportunity till I got to Congress to actually be part of saying thank you to the greatest generation. When we have World War II vets, of which you are one of them, and one of the most important parts, I know what you say to your son Gary about I never thought. You and your sister, God bless her, and may she rest in peace, You were very important to that effort, and even though it's long overdue, I've got some prepared remarks that I'm going to go through quickly. But I just want you to know from myself and everybody in this room how grateful we are for you and the greatest generation and what you have meant to this country. Thank you so much. This well-deserved recognition to the Civil Air Patrol members who fought for our country in World War II. At the beginning of World War II, women made up only 3.5% of licensed pilots throughout our country. But by 1945, up at an impressive 20% of the Civil Air Patrol's senior and cadet membership were women. Two extraordinary Minnesota women stepped up to join the Civil Air Patrol, and we've heard about them here today. Grayce, who is with us, and her sister, Florence, as well. These two women were pioneers. Protecting the lives and freedoms of Americans is a huge task, which is why I called out our other people involved in community policing and the rest who are here today, who, by the way, we have to honor Grayce and Florence, but let's not forget before we leave today to grab the sheriff and grab our police and fire, those people that are stepping up every day to protect us, because now more than ever, I think they need to hear from you and me how important they are to you and me personally, but to our communities. They protect the lives and freedoms of Americans, and it takes special men and women to do this. Grayce and Florence are two of these special individuals, and albeit 70 years late, we want to recognize that. It's individuals like Grayce and her sister Florence that it has truly made America what it is, the best country in the world. Brave men and women who choose to defend our great country and all of us. These sisters dedicated their lives to ensure our safety. Their bravery, courage, and selflessness, which I think is something that is missed a lot today. Selflessness is inspiring, and on behalf of the great state of Minnesota and the United States of America, again, Grayce, I want to thank you and your sister for your service. Thank you.